Welcome, brave soul. I am the forgotten storyteller. Before we begin, tap that like button if you dare, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're listening from. And if you make it to the end of this video, I hope to see you in the next story. I hope you're ready, because I am. Let's begin. They say every city has its ghosts. Some hide in the shadows between alleyways. Some haunt the empty apartments no one dares to rent again. But others, well, others drive right past you every morning, waving through a fogged windshield, wearing a smile that's all teeth and no warmth. They're the ones who make sure the streets stay clean, who make the mess disappear, who know better than anyone that what we throw away says everything about who we are. And one of them was named Hank. Our story today begins in the half-light of a Tuesday morning, 5:47 a.m. The air is sharp, the kind that bites the lungs and fogs your breath before you even realize you're alive. The stench of rotting food and stale beer clung to Hank like a second skin as he wrestled a bulging black bin onto the hydraulic lift. His orange high-vis vest was streaked with grime, his gloves stiff with old sweat. Behind him, Dave, cheerful, oblivious Dave, and Maria, with her tired eyes and chipped blue nail polish, chatted about weekend plans over the rumble of the truck's engine. Dave said, "Another mountain of trash from the Willow Creek apartments. Place breeds garbage, I swear." Hank didn't laugh. He just grunted, eyes fixed on the upper windows of the building. Apartment 3B. She was home. Alone. Again. And that knowledge sent a cold thrill crawling up his spine, like a worm made of ice. Low, discordant hum begins underneath the narration. You see, Hank wasn't just collecting trash. He was curating it. It had started, as these things often do, with something small. A temptation. A curiosity. A question whispered in the dark when no one was around to hear it. How much could a person throw away before anyone noticed? A year ago there was Mrs. Gable in 4A, a lonely widow. Always left her bin overflowing with cat litter and empty sherry bottles. She'd wave from her window sometimes, frail hand trembling with age. Hank had waved back. He'd known she was alone. He'd known she was fragile. And one night he'd acted. He slipped in through the fire escape, quiet as the rust that coated the railings. She never screamed, he made sure of that. And afterward, when the house was silent again, he'd done what he did best, disposed of things. He cut her down to manageable pieces, wrapped each one in heavy-duty contractor bags, the same kind the complex used for regular trash. He placed them neatly, methodically, inside her own bin, right on top of her usual rubbish. The next morning, he'd collected it himself. He remembered watching as the black plastic disappeared into the truck's open maw, the hydraulic compactor swallowing her whole. Mrs. Gable was never reported missing. A quiet woman, no friends, no family nearby. Everyone assumed she'd simply gone away. And the feeling that followed, the rush of it, was intoxicating. Not the kill, no, not at all. Hank didn't fancy himself a monster. He didn't do it for rage or lust. He did it for the purity of the act. The precision. The perfect disposal. He knew the schedules. The routes. The building layouts. Which tenants were night owls. Which ones were rarely home. He had a mental map of the city's pulse, the secret rhythm of its waste. He learned to use the empty bins. He learned how to bury a secret beneath other people's garbage, where even dogs wouldn't sniff. Like last month, the young couple in 2C, always arguing. He waited until the husband stormed out for a walk. The wife opened the door, expecting him to return, and Hank was there instead. He used her own kitchen knives, worked fast and efficient. He was clinical, then wrapped every trace of her existence, body, blood, sheets, all of it, in identical black bags. He tossed them into their bin. No one questioned the weight. Dave just complained about his back the next morning. The husband came home to an empty apartment, filed a missing persons report, and was met with polite indifference. She probably ran off, they said. Marital trouble. But now, Hank's eyes were fixed on 3B. A woman named Sarah. She was in her late 20s and was a nurse. Worked nights at the hospital. He'd watched her for weeks, seen her stumble home at dawn, seen her draw her curtains, seen her been sitting lonely by the curb every Tuesday morning, barely half full. She was the perfect target. He'd even done a little recon, knocked on her door last week pretending to deliver a lost package. She'd smiled politely, thanked him, and shut the door. He'd memorized every detail. The layout, the locks, the way her perfume lingered in the air, a trace of vanilla and antiseptic. That night, lying awake in his small, cluttered apartment, Hank had stared at the ceiling and thought about her. How she'd look asleep. How quiet her apartment would be. How neatly she'd fit into one of his black bags. He could already feel it, the pressure building behind his eyes. The urge. That dark, insistent pulse that whispered, "Tonight." The morning shift blurred by in a haze of noise and stench. The hydraulic whine, the clang of bins, Dave's jokes, Maria's soft sighs. Hank moved with mechanical rhythm, his mind already deep in the night to come. He pictured it all: the balcony door, the placement of the furniture, the sleeping form beneath the blanket. He could almost hear her breathing. And somewhere deep in his chest, excitement coiled like a living thing. By the time their route ended, the city had brightened into a dull, overcast day. Dave offered him a donut. Maria teased him about looking tired. He forced a smile. But inside he was already gone. Already in 3B. That night, the city slept under a damp, low fog. The sodium lights burned halos into the mist, and the hum of far-off traffic was the only heartbeat the streets had left. And in the shadows between them, Hank moved. He parked 2 blocks away. Walked the rest of the distance carrying a duffel bag, his kill kit. Inside, gloves, rope, the heavy-duty bags, a painter's tarp. Everything he needed for another flawless disposal. The lock was flimsy just as he remembered. A little pressure and it gave way with a soft, resigned click. He stepped inside. Sarah's apartment was small but neat. The air smelled faintly of lavender detergent and something sweeter, her shampoo maybe. He paused, letting his eyes adjust, and found her bedroom door slightly ajar. Through the narrow crack he saw her. She was asleep. The blanket rising and falling in the slow rhythm of exhaustion. The pressure behind his eyes became unbearable. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't desire. It was inevitability. And when he moved, it was with the certainty of ritual. There's a kind of stillness right before something terrible happens. Not silence. No, silence is merciful. This is heavier, thicker. Like the air itself knows what's coming and is holding its breath in horror. That was the air in Sarah's bedroom. Hank stepped closer, his boots whispering against the carpet. He could see her face now, pale in the weak streetlight filtering through the blinds. There was something childlike about her expression in sleep, unguarded, peaceful. He almost envied it. The knife came next. Small, sharp, practical. He didn't need to think about what to do. The movements were etched into his bones now. It was habit and routine. The art of vanishing people into the waste stream. He moved like a machine, clinical, detached. And when it was over, when the pressure finally broke and drained from him, he just stood there, breathing, listening. In that moment, he felt something unfamiliar. Not guilt, not yet, but awareness. A faint itch beneath his skin, like someone somewhere was watching. He shook it off and got to work. The cleanup was faster this time, smoother. He double-bagged everything. Sheets, clothing, fragments of flesh, all sealed in identical black bags. He even added some of her own trash, coffee filters, paper takeout boxes, to make it look authentic. Then he carried each one quietly out to the communal bins behind the building. He worked with precision. No witnesses, no noise, no mistakes. But as he placed the final bag, the one with her hands wrapped in her floral sheet, something strange happened. The lid of the neighboring bin slammed shut. He froze, looked around. Nothing. Only the wind shifting through the alley, a newspaper scraping along the wet pavement. A faint voice, almost inaudible, whispers behind him, "Hank?" He turned, breath catching in his throat. No one. He told himself it was the adrenaline, the lack of sleep, the sound of his own conscience echoing back at him through the alley walls. But when he finally walked away, duffel bag empty, something followed him. Not footsteps, not sound, just a presence. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in his armchair, staring at the flickering TV, the glow painting his face in ghostly blues. Every time he blinked, he saw her eyes, open now and unmoving. By dawn, he'd convinced himself it was fine. He'd done this before. Nothing would go wrong. He'd even be the one to collect the evidence himself. By the end of the route, she'd be gone forever, compressed, buried, erased. 6:15 a.m. Back at Willow Creek. "Morning, Hank," Dave called, hopping out of the cab. "You look like death warmed over." "Did you have a rough night?" Hank mumbled. Maria just yawned, pulling her hood tight. "Let's get this over with." They started with the top row of bins, routine, ordinary, until they reached bin 7, Sarah's bin. To Dave, it was just another light bin. "Guess the night shift nurse finally cleaned her fridge," he said cheerfully, hoisting it onto the lift. But to Hank, it was something else. It was finality, closure. He watched the bags tumble out, merging with the mountain of refuse already in the truck. For a heartbeat, one caught on the rim, a tear opening along the seam, exposing a hint of floral fabric before slipping away. Gone. All right, next stop, Dave called. The truck rumbled away from Willow Creek, the city waking up around them. Hank leaned back against the cold metal wall of the cab, staring into the side mirror. 3B was already fading into the distance. But something was off. The smell in the truck was different that morning. Not just the usual rot and sour beer. There was something underneath. Something coppery. Metallic and almost wet. Hank wrinkled his nose, glancing at the compactor's hatch. "You smell that?" he asked. Dave sniffed, shrugged. "Same as always, man. Garbage smells like garbage." But Hank kept smelling it. All day. Even when they dumped the load at the landfill, even when the truck was empty, that copper tang lingered in the air. And when he looked down, he noticed it, thin streaks of red tracing from the compactor drain. He blinked, and they were gone. That night, he dreamt of her, Sarah, standing in the alley where he'd left the bags. Her hair matted, her skin pale and waxy. In her hands, she held one of his black bags, ripped open, leaking. She didn't speak. She just lifted her hand, what was left of it, and pointed behind him. Hank woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The apartment smelled wrong again. The air thick with rot like the truck never left. He staggered to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face. The mirror fogged slightly, his reflection fractured by the cracks running through the glass. He blinked. For a second, just one, Sarah stood behind him. He spun around. Nothing. But the black bags were back. There were 3 of them, stacked neatly by the door. Impossible. He'd watched them disappear. He stepped closer, shaking. One of the bags moved. He froze. His breath came shallow. The air was heavy with the same stench he'd lived with for years, but now it felt alive. The kind of smell that clings not to your clothes but to your soul. And for the first time since he'd begun his collection, Hank realized something horrifying. He wasn't the only one curating. Someone, or something, had been watching. The next morning, Dave arrived early. Hank wasn't outside waiting. The truck's cabin door was open. His vest hung neatly over the driver's seat. Maria frowned, calling his name once, twice. Then she noticed the footprints, muddy, leading from the truck to the alley. And behind the truck, sitting in the weak morning light, 3 black bags. Dawn slid its gray fingers across the city, peeling back the night to reveal what it always left behind. Trash. Always trash. But at Willow Creek that morning, something else waited among the bins. 3 black bags sat neatly in a row just behind the garbage truck. The rain had plastered them to the pavement, but they weren't bloated like refuse. They were taut and purposeful. Dave frowned, rubbing his chin. "Did you leave those there?" he asked Maria. She shook her head. "They weren't here last night. Probably someone doing a midnight dump," he muttered, half-hearted. But his voice wavered. "We'll just load them up." Maria hesitated. "We're not supposed to take anything untagged." Dave sighed. "You want to leave him here for the rats?" It hit the compactor with a heavy, wet thud. Then the second. Then the third. The machine groaned as it crushed them, the sound deeper, wetter than usual. And from somewhere within that grinding mass came a muffled moan. Dave froze. Maria dropped her clipboard. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. They waited, listening. The only sound was the steady patter of rain. Dave laughed shakily. "Probably a raccoon or something. Let's move." But when he turned toward the driver's seat, the vest hanging there caught his eye. Hank's vest. Still damp. Still heavy with the stink of rot. He frowned. "Where's Hank anyway?" Maria didn't answer. She was staring at the windshield. A faint smear of red streaks across the inside of the glass. Like a hand dragged down from within. Dave's voice cracked. "What the?" The engine surged, headlights flaring like eyes snapping open. The doors slammed shut and locked. The compactor rumbled again, hungry, rhythmic, metallic. Maria screamed as the truck lurched forward, tires screeching, dragging the bins behind it. The police report would later list them as missing. Dave Ramirez, age 38. Maria Lopez, age 31. Last seen departing their usual route from Willow Creek Apartments. The truck was found 4 days later, abandoned in a scrapyard outside the city. No sign of struggle. No blood. But inside the compactor, when the investigators pried it open, they found something they couldn't explain. Scratched into the inner walls, deep enough to catch the light, were words. Not scrawled by a hand, but carved, as though something inside the machine had written them. 2 words. Collection incomplete. They never found Hank. But here's the thing about garbage, about the endless churn of it. You can bury it. You can crush it. You can pretend it's gone. But it doesn't disappear. It festers. It waits. And sometimes, it comes back. The first sightings came weeks later. Drivers along the south route reported seeing a second truck shadowing theirs just before dawn. No markings, no headlights, only the faint amber flash of a warning beacon through the fog. They'd look in the mirror, see it behind them, and then it would vanish. At the landfill, workers found bins with tags from neighborhoods long since cleared, the ink smudged, the labels unreadable. But inside, black bags. Perfectly tied. Each one containing fragments of uniforms, high-vis vests, rubber gloves, shredded ID cards. The landfill foreman joked about the phantom collector. Until the night he disappeared too. A low voice whispers, "Next stop," in Hank's tone. And sometimes when the morning air is just right, you can hear it. A truck that isn't on any schedule. A low groan of hydraulics in an empty alley. The rattle of bins when no one's outside. The stench hits first, rotting food, sour beer and old coffee. Then, underneath it, the faint metallic tang of something else like copper. Decay and finality. Then a low whisper, Hank's voice layered with others, his victims merging together. "You throw away so much. I just make sure it all finds its place." Maybe you've seen him. A sanitation worker who never waves. A truck that passes just before your alarm goes off. A faint knock at your door the night before collection day. If you do, don't answer. Don't look out the window. Don't check the bins. Because the collector's still out there. And if your trash goes missing, if your bin's a little too empty in the morning, it's not because you've been cleaned up. It's because you've been chosen. He knows the rhythms. He knows the routes. He knows the smell of your life, every scrap of it. And he's still curating. Because in the end, we're all just one bag away from being part of the collection. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. It means so much. Please don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next story.
Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts? Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare.